Wizard 6 Degrees of Expectation. Today we're looking at Magna Roma by Archona Games, which is coming to Kickstarter very soon, and you might be watching this because you've looked at the Kickstarter and you're wondering what you can expect when you get it to the table. But fear not, I am about to explain to you in 6 very simple steps. So, let's have a look, shall we? At its heart, Magna Roma is what you call a Euro game, and that means that the winner is generally defined by the person who, playing through the mechanics of the game, has the most points at the end of the game. The story behind Magna Roma, or the setting, is set in kind of the Roman times of the Roman Empire, where you've been instructed by the emperor to build the next greatest Roman city, and you're facing off against other opponents who are also building their own city, represented by kind of laying various tiles in game. Magna Roma is all based around these tiles, and not only these tiles but also the symbols that they create. At the edge of every tile there's like half a symbol. When you slot a city into place, or part of your city into place, it creates full symbols. These full symbols then allow you to move up the various tracks that you have. You have a track for military, you have a track for the market, you have a track also to do with favour of the gods as well. You've got your general victory points track, where you can also buy monuments that you place within your city. And a combination of moving up these tracks and also managing the favours that you get from the gods, building your monuments, will ensure you get victory in the overall game. The game itself is split into only a couple of main parts. The first part is the kind of the selection of your tiles. There'll be a selection of up to 8 tiles which you can pick to go into and build up your city. Your city is going to end up in like a 5x5 grid. And what you'll do is that you will take the tile that you've selected from the previous round, and your counter that you have, you're allowed to move 2 spaces. And it can be up to 2 spaces in either direction. However, you're not allowed to put your counter on a tile where another player already is. So that might mean you have to skip around the circle before you're able to land on a tile that you actually want. Based on the symbols that you've created, you will then move up the various tracks. Then you've got kind of different actions on each of the areas. The marketplace is an overall kind of point scoring multiplier for the end of the game. Depending on what's also on the tiles, like a star symbol moves you up the individual star track, which again, combined with the market, actually goes towards scoring you points. Favour of the gods, as you move up the favour of the gods tracks, you'll be granted favours. One of the actions you can take is you can actually place a favour on your city, and what that will do is that will grant you all of the advancements on the various tracks that you have within that city that's already there. When you're placing a tile on the city, you're rewarded in 2 different ways. If the symbol that you create is part of 2 areas of the city which are of separate colours, then you'll score less. If you match together symbols on similar colours, so for instance I've got 2 reds here, and that creates a coin. Now because it's 2 reds joining together, so matching them together, I'll get 2 coins instead of the usual 1. And the game keeps on going like that. You'll be moving up the military track. As you gain military strength, you'll be able then to sacrifice some of that military strength to invade certain surrounding provinces. These certain provinces, they all have reward cards on them, and then based on the layout of your city, what the different types of tiles that you have in your city, then that will also boost up your kind of end up victory points. So overall, Magna Roma is about building up your city, but it's also about building up towards getting yourself a bigger end game scoring as possible. Your city grid's going to be a 5x5 grid eventually, and once you reach kind of like a 5x5 grid, then that's kind of like the end of the game and you get into end game scoring. Winning the game, well, the winner of the game is the person who has the most victory points, so it follows a typical kind of Euro slant. How you get there is the interesting thing, because there is an end of game scoring where, based on where you are on the tracks, based on your kind of your layout of your city, you may be scoring a lot of points at the end of the game, which means that you have to do a little bit of calculation at the very, very end. In terms of learning the game, I'm not usually a big fan of huge rule books, but I am a big fan of rule books that explain their mechanics extremely well. And you'll find that Magna Roma is actually very easy to learn. There is only a couple of main rules that you have to learn. It's probably it's one of these games you can actually set it all up, get it going, and then people can just kind of jump in. In terms of, it's a bit of a deceptive swan though, because on the surface it looks kind of quite still and almost quite simple, but there's a lot of hidden depths and strategies beyond this which are going to take a good maybe 3 or 4 plays to actually learn and pick up. In terms of looks wise, Magna Roma relies a lot on its iconography, and as you can see from the game itself, that's something that's very, very clear. They've not done anything particularly clever with the joining symbols, which I'm kind of pleased to see. So they are very, very clear when you're kind of wanting to get an overview on what you're looking at, as well as maybe what your opponent is doing as well. In terms of table space, this is what kind of a one-player setup, so you can imagine that there's going to be a lot of table required in order to set up kind of like a full game, especially if you want a bit of space about it. So it could be potentially seen as a little bit of a table hog. From a graphical point of view, everything's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's almost the game itself is kind of language. It's not language independent. There's not really any text on the cards that you need to be kind of aware of. Everything's kind of defined by kind of iconography. In terms of time, Magna Roma is actually quite a little bit quicker than you would maybe expect. A good 60 to 90 minutes. That'll probably depend on the number of players that you have. The only thing that's a deciding factor here is the order in which people are going to be taking their tiles. And that'll define when they're going to be laying their tiles and putting it on the tracks. Obviously some people will take slightly longer, and there's a potentially a large amount of opportunity for AP here. This is a bit of a brain burner of a game, or can be. But yeah, if you get through this in 90 minutes with a couple of players, probably pretty easy. Actually doesn't spend too long at the table. So that's Magna Roma by Archona Games. My name's Richard. This is We're Not Wizards and 6 Degrees of Expectation. If you want to know what we think of Magna Roma, there'll be a link somewhere, which you can click on either here or it'll be in the show notes below, which you can click on and you get some thoughts, what we thought about the game. As we said, this is a Kickstarter, which means that the rules, the iconography, everything can be subject to change based on the performance of the campaign or what could happen during the campaign itself. But this is 6 Degrees of Expectation. My name's Richard, and until the next time, stay safe, roll discs. You gotta love that Roman technology. Until the next time, goodbye. Ecce Romani, in pictura est puella. Domine Flavia.